Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up. That will help YouTube to promote my content. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those as well, and I will respond. Thank you again. Welcome to this week's video. This week I will not be doing a wood turning video, but instead showing you my trip in my sailboat to Dipper Harbour. I hope you enjoy and come back next week to see more wood turning videos. This was my first trip out into the Bay of Fundy. All my sailing up until this point has been in the Saint John River. This trip, we left Saint John, New Brunswick and traveled to Dipper Harbour, New Brunswick. On Saturday, there was no wind and it was pretty foggy, so we ended up motoring all the way, but we had a good sail on the return trip. For those that aren't familiar with the reversing falls, the Bay of Fundy has the highest tides in the world, over 28 feet. So as the tides come in, the water in the bay is actually higher than the river, and the water backs up and creates a falls. And then when the tide goes down, the bay is lower than the river, and there's a waterfall coming out of the river into the bay. As such, a sailboat can only go through on a slack tide when the level of the river is equal to the bay, and this only occurs for about a 20-minute window every tide cycle for a sailboat. Sorry I don't have any video of my trip through the falls. It was very foggy and I had an issue with my camera, but I will have some video on the return trip. Here's the boat that we're going with. Danny Harrigan and Windsway. We're just about to cross under the harbor bridge. We're being filmed by the other boat as we're filming them. Passing under the harbor bridge now. There's Coast Guard over there. It's quite foggy here, but out of the fog there's a huge ship beside us here tied up on the west side. I can hear a foghorn. It's a pretty big ship. Sitting under the cranes, being unloaded. Here we have another ship pulling up beside us. There happened to be a race that day from Saint John to Digby, and this is one of the participants. So here we are into the ocean. We're past Partridge Island, halfway to Magawagonish Island. The visibility is probably only about 100 feet, and there's currently not any wind. It was pretty foggy that day, as I mentioned, so we didn't get to see much. I did see a couple porpoises across our bow. Unfortunately, I didn't get my camera out in time, but we did have this bird that tended to hitchhike with us and stayed with us for most of the trip. So here we are tied up in Dipper Harbour. You can see there when you look on the side, we're pretty well at low tide. Later on, around midnight, it was high tide and the water would have come up to the top of those rocks that you saw just above that black line. Here you see some small ducks. They're actually the namesake of Dipper Harbour. They're known as dipper ducks just for the way that they bob up and down in the water. It's Sunday morning, nice clear sky. We woke up to some wind and ready for a good sail. There's Colson Cove in the distance. Beautiful morning. Wind is good. No fog. We should have a beautiful trip. Today you can see the beautiful shoreline, rocky shoreline, but beautiful just the same. Just off in the distance is the entrance to Chance Harbor. In the distance you can see Partridge Island. The history of Partridge Island was that it was a quarantine station for immigrants coming into Saint John, mostly Irish coming in during the potato famine. Passing us is the Saint John Harbor pilot. That boat is going out to meet a large vessel out in the harbor and it will bring it in. Here we are tied up at Market Slip, just waiting for the tide to be right in order to bring the sailboats up through the falls. Here we are at the base of Reversing Falls, just waiting for the water to get smooth before we head up through the falls. Quite a bit clearer day than yesterday when we came through. Just passing under Reversing Falls Bridge, you can see here that there's very little current or tide. Here you can see some fishermen catching some bass in the river. The bass are plentiful and they tend to bring in the seals into the mouth of the river. From the falls to the marina, it was just a short trip, probably another 20 minutes, which finished up this trip. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're interested, please follow me, as next week I will be returning to some wood turning videos. A big shout out to my crew, Alan Arbo, and to Danny Harrigan, my mentor for this trip.